Well, hey there team, welcome back to the channel. Welcome to my overview of Senua's Saga Hellblade II. Okay, so look, you knew this video was coming, and it's gonna be exactly what you think. So grab your popcorn and buckle in, let's go. I do overviews on this channel, and when I do an overview, I just look at the first 2 hours of a video game. That's the Steam refund window. Steam says you can make up your mind if you want to keep a game or not in that time. And I generally agree. I would say 20 hours in, you're probably not gonna change your mind about how you feel 2 hours in. Or 5 hours in, I suppose. So I tend to do these short punchy videos around 10 minutes, but we'll see how we go. I've got a bit to rant about. I'll try and keep on the rails. And then you can make up your own bloody mind out of the info that I give you. So if I don't make it to 2 hours, I declare it here, and I didn't. I played an hour of this yesterday, and I slept on it, and I thought, all right, fresh face, let's give it another go this morning. I played it for 10 minutes, like, nah, I know what's going on here. The 2 hours is used to make up your mind about a game, and I've made up my mind. It's not worth your time. It's not worth your money. Now, before you go blasting me in the comments section, being a good little bloody warrior for your side of the conversation, perhaps you hear me out. The biggest gaslighting that's happened in modern gaming, which for me to say might surprise some people, is the idea that games can be art. Us in our reasonable nature as gamers allowed that to be a vector for what is becoming more and more bad actors. Games can be art? Sure, yeah, why not? That sounds reasonable. Games are a consumer product that adhere to certain practices. Now, they're not industry enforced, but generally speaking, amongst the public, there are certain things we expect. Now, there's a bit of grey, there's a bit of massage room, but we expect if a game is X dollars, it's going to be X long and it's going to have X gameplay to a certain standard as well. And this is why you get terms of disparagement like walking sims and all that. What saying a walking sim is, apart from, say, the great exception, which is like Death Stranding, literally a game about simulating the mechanics and machinations of walking, and it's quite good at doing that too. But generally speaking, walking sim is a disparaging term. It's an insult. It's to point out that this game is a shit game. And I cannot for the life of me understand how people unironically tag games as walking sims on Steam. So yeah, this is gameplay weak. When you see facetious comments about games where you just hold W to go forward, generally, if you're like me, you kind of dismiss it and go, there's probably some truth to it, but it's exaggerated. It's not that exaggerated here. Literally holding W for fucking most of the time I've been playing it is wild. And then you get locked into cutscenes that in another game would be QuickTime events, but there's no QuickTime prompt. So a lot of the time I'm just sitting there watching this stupid bloody cutscene, and then she decides, oh no, I'm gonna stop climbing up this mountain. But then I just press W and she goes into another fucking 20-second canned animation about poor me, my emotions, with the rotating camera. There's some swordplay, but it's really fucking weak. You can literally spam dodge and you dodge all the attacks. And don't even get me started about the fact that I'm this 20-pound soaking wet Sheila with a sword squaring off in a straight fair fight with dudes that look like they're straight out of Fury Road. These skinhead, ripped fucking monsters. These aren't farm hands, these are dudes that are bloody sailing oars fucking 20 hours a day. And she's not using some trick or underhanded tactic or anything like that. She's just having a straight up fight between them. So after that first hour where I bloody killed probably about 5 fucking Mr. Olympian athletes back to back by literally breaking their guard with a heavy attack with this noodle arm tiny little bloody runway model. Oh my god, there's a suspension of disbelief. But honestly, it's not even worth dwelling on because that's not the worst thing. Before I get away from it, games is art. You can't have your cake and eat it too. So pick one and plant your flag in it. And when I say that, referring back to the consumer product point, here's my pitch. If you want to release a game as art, do one of two things. One, make it free for everyone. Make it a free-to-play game. Like, I can think off the top of my head, what was it called? I played many years ago. Kids? You can look it up if you want to see games as art. Sort of trying to make an expressive statement and all that. It's only a short little 15-minute black and white game, and it was free to play. And, it didn't necessarily resonate with me, but I appreciate doing it the way it did. It did the museum model. It's like, here's our sort of artistic statement that's not really a game, but it's free to all. Come in and check it out, right? To me, that's how you would do art in one perspective. The other is reflect the way that art works in the market, which would be you can't release this digitally for infinite reprintable digital certificates on sale. You need demand and supply restrictions. So only print, 50 discs, a couple dozen discs in actual physical format, and that's the only way you can play this game. and let the price be dictated by the auction market, just like art, right? I would honestly say that's how you should treat games as art. But they won't do that because they want it both ways. They want to use your reasonable exception that, oh yeah, sure, a game can be not a game, but it can be art. But they also want to charge you AAA prices and fucking turn a profit and pretend it's a consumer good. So which is it? And that's an argument I don't see very often, and that to me is the only argument. So yeah, it's overpriced and it's got hardly any gameplay here. I've heard 5 hours being the sort of going rate, but then even if it went for a couple more hours, then what gameplay here is thin as fuck. Very weak, but very pretty sword play, holding W and occasionally pressing F if W doesn't do it, push a rock out of the way or something, and then lining up puzzles that you can only see in your mind's eye, and which is such a fucking stretch. I can't remember. Look, I played the first game, and you got to understand, I and a lot of people, we were different people when the first game came out. And as best as memory serves, and for some reason you don't know, this game is about a chick that's got fucking psychosis or some sort of personality dissonance, right? And I don't give a shit about the modern version of it or the correct nomenclature. She's a loony in a bloody Viking slave time period. Now, in the first game, that was the gimmick, that was the selling point, the shtick. And at that point in the game space, it was kind of interesting and intriguing. And I think a lot of people went in with an open mind and gave it a go. And I believe it suffered from the same sort of thin gameplay problems. But again, a different time where goodwill was much more abundant. And while it's unforgivable how much money for what product they are charging here, I can also say that the product will suffer because of the changing of the times, which is to say, this sort of mental illness, while that was a novel and interesting idea when the first game came out, nowadays is fashionable. And it's created a boy cry wolf scenario with the way a lot of people see mental illness, because these days it's pretty clear that you have weak people piggybacking off of the essentially benefit scheme that is having a tick box saying that you're mentally unwell. And so through my eyes, I recognize that I went in open-minded with the first game, but I'm very, very skeptical about the fetishization of this subject material for this game. Now, is the studio still the same people and still true to form, or have they been infiltrated by these bad actors that use illness as a stepping stone for personal gain? It's hard to really say, but I will say this, there's a missed opportunity. Going into the sequel, you could have created a whole bunch of bloody mini games and gameplay loops rotating around dealing with psychosis and having people's voices in your head. Instead, they've opted to essentially copy-paste the exact same thing as I remember it from the first game. Binaural sound, a couple of voices in your head, whispering away. However, the writing becomes a bit masturbatory at times and poetic, romantic even, which actually takes me right out of it. Now, I'm not fucking insane, not more than the normal bogan, so I don't have a billion voices in my head screaming at me, but I would assume that they would be disruptive and primal, and at times they are here, but a lot of the time they have romantic, poetic language, which I would not think primordial, subconscious voices slipping through would be written in such a way as to have some sort of, writing quality. It should just be screaming, grunting, and just generally unpleasant, awful, primal stuff. Oh God, it's turning into a rant. Anyway, so yeah, I wouldn't strictly say that baked into its actual design philosophy that it is in fact fetishizing mental illness, but it is doing the cardinal crime of just copy-pasting the first game, almost exactly the same. What an absolute tragedy. But again, this is going to get co-opted by people that tweet 10,000 times a day and they've made their illness their armor. And this game is less a game and more a rallying cry for the ill. And it cuts the other way. You got people like me that live in fucking reality. And again, was willing to give the first game at the time of day. And given that this is just the exact same thing, arguably a bit prettier, but definitely more expensive and definitely as less a game as that one, I'm sorry, I'm just not interested. I don't find the party trick of echoey sounds to explore mental illness to hold water in current year. Those are my thoughts, and I tried to keep them as coherent as possible. This game will be a really interesting filter, a key jangling moment. There are a lot of reasons for people to rally behind this game that have nothing to do with the merit of it being a game. Whether it's a poster child for a cause, whether that be about psychosis or a console war between Xbox and PlayStation, or even people that are asleep at the wheel, not really realizing that they're paying fucking 10 times as much as they could for a movie ticket to get something that in many ways is much worse. Anyway, team, that's my video. Let's wrap it there. Might just leave it there for the time being. I'll catch you guys on the next one.